The sterile smell of antiseptic hung heavy in the pediatric wing of St. Michael's Hospital as Marcus Whitmore stepped through the automatic doors, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the linoleum floor. At 38, he was one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the country, his tech investment empire spanning 3 continents. Yet none of his wealth could prepare him for what he was about to face. His 7-year-old niece, Caroline, had been admitted 2 hours ago with a severe asthma attack, and his sister Victoria had called him in tears, begging him to come. Marcus wasn't good with hospitals, or children for that matter. His life revolved around boardrooms and profit margins, not stuffed animals and IV drips. He found Victoria in the waiting area, her mascara smudged from crying. "Thank God you're here," she whispered, gripping his arm. "They're running tests now." "I'm terrified, Marcus. She'll be fine," he said with more confidence than he felt. "This is the best hospital in the state." As Victoria went to get coffee, Marcus sat alone, his mind racing through worst-case scenarios. He pulled out his phone to distract himself with emails, but the words blurred together. That's when he heard it. A small voice, clear and sweet, singing softly from somewhere down the hall. Curious, Marcus stood and followed the sound. It led him to a small playroom adjacent to the nurse's station. Through the doorway, he saw a little girl, no more than 6 or 7, with golden curls cascading down her back. She sat cross-legged on a foam mat, arranging colored blocks into an elaborate tower while humming a melody he vaguely recognized. What struck him most were her eyes, an unusual shade of green gold, almost amber in the fluorescent light. They reminded him of someone, though he couldn't place who. "That's quite a tower," Marcus found himself saying. The girl looked up, startled but not afraid. "Thank you," she said politely. "I'm building a castle. My mom says I'm good at making things." Before Marcus could respond, a woman rushed into the room, her breath coming in short gasps. "Bella, I told you to stay in the room." Marcus turned and felt the air leave his lungs. The woman was perhaps 30, with auburn hair pulled into a messy ponytail, and the same striking amber eyes as the child. She wore scrubs, clearly a hospital employee, and there was something achingly familiar about her face. His mind scrambled through memories, searching. "I'm sorry," the woman said quickly, reaching for the girl's hand. "She's supposed to be resting. We didn't mean to disturb anyone." "No disturbance," Marcus said slowly, still studying her face. Is everything all right?" The woman's expression tightened. "Just a checkup. Come on, Bella." But as she turned, Marcus caught sight of her name tag, Claire Mitchell, RN. The name hit him like a physical blow. Claire Mitchell. Harvard, 10 years ago. The literature student he'd met at a campus party, the one who'd made him laugh for the first time in months after his father's death. They'd spent one incredible summer together before he'd left for Silicon Valley to launch his first startup. He'd promised to call, to visit, but the company had consumed him. By the time he'd thought to reach out, she'd disappeared. No forwarding number, no social media presence he could find. "Claire?" The word escaped before he could stop it. She froze, her back still to him. Slowly, she turned, and he saw recognition dawn in her eyes, followed immediately by something that looked like panic. "Marcus Whitmore," she said flatly. "It wasn't a question. I can't believe it's you. After all these years? Mommy, who is this man?" Bella tugged on Claire's hand, her amber eyes, his eyes, Marcus realized with growing shock, moving between them. "An old acquaintance," Claire said quickly. "We need to go, sweetie." But Marcus's analytical mind was already calculating. The girl was 6, maybe 7. 10 years since he'd last seen Claire. The resemblance in the eyes, the way Claire was suddenly pale, backing away as if he were dangerous. "How old is she?" The question came out sharper than he intended. Claire's jaw tightened. "That's none of your business. Claire, please." "I said it's none of your business, Marcus." Her voice was low but fierce. "Stay away from us." She scooped Bella into her arms and hurried down the hallway, leaving Marcus standing in the empty playroom, his heart pounding. He wasn't a man accustomed to being dismissed or ignored. In his world, people answered his questions, returned his calls, respected his authority. But more than his bruised ego, something else gnawed at him, a terrible, impossible suspicion that he couldn't shake. He returned to the waiting area in a daze. Victoria was back, sipping her coffee and looking slightly calmer. "They're bringing Caroline back to her room soon," she said. "The doctor thinks it was just a bad reaction to the new cat we got. We'll have to rehome poor Mr. Whiskers." Marcus nodded absently, barely hearing her. His mind was elsewhere, replaying those amber eyes, calculating timelines, remembering the way Claire had looked at him, not with joy at an unexpected reunion, but with fear. Over the next 2 hours, as he sat with Victoria and Caroline, Marcus couldn't shake the encounter from his thoughts. When his niece finally fell asleep, he excused himself and walked to the nurse's station. "I'm looking for Claire Mitchell," he said to the woman behind the desk. "She's a nurse here." The woman glanced at her computer. "Claire's shift ended an hour ago." "Does she work here full-time?" The nurse gave him a suspicious look. "I can't give out employee information, sir." Marcus pulled out his phone and opened his contacts. He had resources, investigators, lawyers, people who could find anyone. But even as his thumb hovered over his assistant's number, something stopped him. If Claire was hiding something from him, barging into her life with hired investigators would only make things worse. He needed to be smart about this, strategic. He returned to Caroline's room, where Victoria was dozing in the chair beside the bed. As he watched his niece sleep, her small chest rising and falling steadily, he thought about Bella's tower of blocks, her sweet singing, those impossible amber eyes. The next morning, after Victoria assured him Caroline was being discharged and would be fine, Marcus made a decision. Instead of returning to his penthouse or his office, he went to the hospital's Human Resources Department. A generous donation, he'd learned over the years, could open many doors. Within an hour, he'd arranged to fund a new pediatric wing, a multi-million-dollar commitment that had the hospital administrator practically weeping with gratitude. In return, he asked for one small favor: information about volunteer opportunities. Specifically, he wanted to know about programs where he might interact with the nursing staff, perhaps mentor young patients. "We have a wonderful reading program," the administrator gushed. "Volunteers read to children in the pediatric ward every Tuesday and Thursday evening. Many of our nurses bring their own children. It's quite heartwarming." "Perfect," Marcus said, signing the donation papers. "Sign me up." As he left the hospital that afternoon, Marcus caught his reflection in the glass doors. He looked the same as always. Expensive suit, confident posture, the face that had graced the covers of Forbes and Fortune. But inside, everything had shifted. For the first time in a decade, he wasn't thinking about his next acquisition or quarterly earnings. He was thinking about a little girl with amber eyes and a tower of blocks, and the woman who'd looked at him like he was the most dangerous thing in the world. He was thinking about the summer he'd spent with Claire Mitchell, the promises he'd broken, and the question that now consumed him. Was Bella his daughter? And if she was, why had Claire kept her a secret? Tuesday evening arrived with unexpected nervousness. Marcus Whitmore, who had negotiated billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, found himself anxious about reading children's books to a group of sick kids. He'd spent the previous 3 days consumed by thoughts of Claire and Bella, running scenarios through his mind, researching everything he could about Claire Mitchell without crossing into stalker territory. What he'd found was surprisingly little. She kept no social media presence, lived modestly in a small apartment in Queens, and had worked at St. Michael's for 6 years. No mention of a husband, no wedding announcements, nothing. The hospital's volunteer coordinator, a cheerful woman named Patricia, greeted him warmly. "Mr. Whitmore, we're so honored to have you join our program. The children will be thrilled." Marcus followed her to the pediatric wing's common room, a colorful space filled with beanbags, bookshelves, and artwork covering the walls. Several children were already gathered, some in wheelchairs, others with IV poles, and there, in the corner, helping a young boy adjust his oxygen tube, was Claire. She looked up as he entered, and the color drained from her face. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Patricia's voice cut through the tension. "Everyone, this is Mr. Whitmore." He's graciously volunteered to read to us tonight." The children clapped politely, but Marcus barely heard them. His eyes were locked on Claire, who had turned her attention back to the boy, her movements stiff and deliberate. He noticed she wasn't in scrubs today. She wore jeans and a soft blue sweater that made her eyes even more striking. "Mommy, it's the man from before." Marcus's heart stopped. Bella emerged from behind a bookshelf, clutching a worn copy of The Secret Garden. She skipped over to Claire, completely unaware of the earthquake her presence had just caused. "Shh, sweetheart," Claire whispered, but it was too late. "You know Mr. Whitmore?" Patricia asked, delighted. "How wonderful." Claire's expression could have frozen fire. "We met briefly, years ago." "Well, isn't that serendipitous?" Patricia beamed. "Bella, would you like Mr. Whitmore to read your favorite book?" Before Claire could object, Bella nodded eagerly and held up The Secret Garden. "It's about a girl who finds a hidden garden and makes it beautiful again." Marcus took the book with trembling hands. "That sounds like a wonderful story." For the next 45 minutes, he read to the gathered children, acutely aware of Claire's presence across the room. She helped other nurses distribute juice boxes and graham crackers, studiously avoiding his gaze. But Bella sat right at his feet, completely entranced, her amber eyes wide with wonder at the story of Mary Lennox and her secret world. As Marcus read about the garden coming back to life, he found himself watching Bella's reactions. The way she bit her lip during tense moments, how she smiled at the happy parts. Every gesture, every expression felt achingly familiar. He saw himself in her intensity, the way she leaned forward with complete focus. His mother had always said he'd been like that as a child, absorbed in whatever caught his interest. When the reading ended and parents began collecting their children, Marcus knew he had only moments. He approached Claire, who was packing Bella's backpack with practiced efficiency. "We need to talk," he said quietly. "No, we don't. Claire, please, just 5 minutes." She finally looked at him, and the pain in her eyes nearly broke him. "You had 10 years, Marcus. You don't get 5 minutes now. I didn't know." "Exactly. You didn't know because you didn't care enough to find out." Her voice was barely a whisper, but each word landed like a blade. "You left. You promised you'd call, that we'd figure things out, and then you just vanished. I tried to find you. After a few months I called your dorm, but they said you'd withdrawn. No forwarding information, because I was pregnant and terrified." The words burst out before she could stop them. She glanced quickly at Bella, who was thankfully distracted by another child. "I was 22 years old, alone, and carrying the child of a man who'd clearly decided I wasn't worth remembering." Marcus felt as if she'd punched him in the chest. "Is she mine?" Claire's laugh was bitter. "Now you ask? Now when she's 7 years old and her whole life is established? That's not an answer. You don't deserve an answer. Maybe not. But she deserves to know her father." Claire's eyes flashed dangerously. Her father is the title given to someone who's there, who shows up, who doesn't abandon people when things get inconvenient. You're just a man who happened to contribute some DNA. She paused, realizing what she'd revealed. "Not that I'm confirming anything, Claire." "Mr. Whitmore." Bella bounced over, clutching a drawing. "I made this for you. It's The Secret Garden." Marcus looked down at the crayon drawing. A riot of colors depicting flowers and trees, and a small figure with golden hair. In the corner, she'd written in careful letters, "Thank you for reading. From Bella." "It's beautiful," he managed, his throat tight. "Thank you, Bella. Maybe you can read to us again next week." Her hopeful expression nearly destroyed him. "I'd like that very much." Claire grabbed Bella's hand firmly. "We'll see. Say goodbye, sweetie." "Bye, Mr. Whitmore." As they walked away, Marcus stood holding the drawing, feeling more lost than he had in years. He'd built an empire from nothing, navigated hostile takeovers and market crashes. But this was beyond anything he knew how to handle. "She's a special little girl," Patricia said, appearing beside him. "Claire's done an amazing job raising her alone. It can't have been easy, working full-time and going to nursing school while caring for an infant, but she never complains. Bella's lucky to have such a devoted mother." Marcus absorbed this information like physical blows. Nursing school with an infant, alone. While he'd been closing deals and buying vacation homes, Claire had been struggling to build a life for their daughter. Their daughter. Claire hadn't actually denied it. She'd danced around it, avoided it. But she hadn't said no. That night, Marcus sat in his penthouse overlooking Central Park, Bella's drawing spread on his marble coffee table. His assistant, Jennifer, had left 3 urgent messages about a merger in Singapore, but he couldn't bring himself to care. Instead, he opened his laptop and pulled up the photos from his Harvard days, the few he'd kept from that summer. There was Claire, laughing at something he'd said, her auburn hair catching the sunlight. Another of them at a campus cafe, her head on his shoulder. He'd been different then. Still driven, still ambitious, but not yet consumed by it. Claire had grounded him, made him think about things beyond success and wealth. She'd challenged him to read poetry, to visit art museums, to consider what he wanted his life to mean, not just what he wanted to achieve. And then his startup had gotten its first major funding offer, and he'd left Boston for California, promising to make it work long distance. But 18-hour workdays had turned into weeks without contact, and by the time he'd come up for air, months had passed. He'd convinced himself she'd moved on, that she wouldn't want to be tied to someone who couldn't give her the time and attention she deserved. He'd been a coward, he realized now, disguising abandonment as self-sacrifice. Marcus picked up his phone and dialed his head of security. "I need you to find someone, discreetly. No direct contact, just background information. Claire Mitchell, nurse at St. Michael's Hospital. I want to know about her life, her finances, any struggles she's facing, family situation, everything." He hung up, feeling dirty but determined. If Bella was his daughter, and every instinct screamed that she was, then he'd missed 7 years. He couldn't get those back, but he could make sure the next 7 and all the years after were different. The question was, how to convince Claire to give him that chance when he'd already proven himself unworthy of it. Block 3. The report arrived 3 days later, and Marcus read it with growing shame and determination. Claire's life was a testament to resilience and sacrifice. After leaving Harvard, she'd returned to her hometown in Pennsylvania, lived with her mother until Bella was 2, then moved to New York for better job opportunities. She'd worked as a hospital aide while attending nursing school part-time, a process that had taken her 6 years instead of the usual 4. Her mother had passed away 3 years ago from cancer, around the time Claire had finally earned her nursing degree. The financial details were worse. Claire lived paycheck to paycheck, her modest salary stretched thin by New York's brutal cost of living. She had student loans totaling nearly $80,000, medical debt from her mother's final illness, and she was currently 3 months behind on rent. The report noted that her landlord had filed eviction proceedings, scheduled for a hearing in 2 weeks. Marcus set down the papers and walked to his floor-to-ceiling windows. Below, the city glittered with possibilities and promise, at least for people like him. For people like Claire, it was a constant struggle just to survive. He showed up at the next Tuesday reading session with a plan, though it dissolved the moment Bella ran up to him with a gap-toothed smile. She'd lost her first tooth, and she couldn't wait to tell him all about it. "The tooth fairy brought me $5 whole," she announced proudly. "That's wonderful," Marcus said, his heart breaking at how excited she was about $5. He probably spent more than that on a single cup of coffee. Claire appeared moments later, her expression guarded. "Bella, go help Miss Patricia set up the chairs, please." When Bella scampered off, Claire crossed her arms. "What do you want, Marcus?" "To help." "We don't need your help. Everyone needs help sometimes. There's no shame in it." Her eyes flashed. "Is that what you think this is about? Shame? You have no idea what my life is like, what I've been through." "Then tell me," he interrupted gently. "Have coffee with me. 1 hour. Let me understand." "So you can what? Swoop in and fix everything with your billions? Make yourself feel better about abandoning us? That's not fair." "Fair?" Claire's laugh was sharp. "You want to talk about fair? I was 22 and pregnant, Marcus. I tried to find you, called every number I had, even showed up at your company's office in Silicon Valley. Your secretary told me you were too busy to see me and that I should stop calling or she'd contact security. So don't talk to me about fair. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. What? When? When I was 5 months pregnant, I'd saved for months to afford the plane ticket. Her voice cracked slightly. I thought if I could just see you, explain face to face, but you'd moved on. Big, important businessman with no time for the girl from his past. Claire, I swear I never got those messages. Jennifer would never... But even as he said it, doubt crept in. Jennifer had been fiercely protective back then, filtering his calls and visitors ruthlessly. She'd thought she was helping him focus, eliminating distractions. Had she seen a desperate young woman as just another distraction? It doesn't matter now, Claire said, but her eyes were bright with unshed tears. I figured out how to survive without you. We both did. Over her shoulder, Marcus could see Bella arranging picture books on a small table, humming the same melody he'd first heard her sing. His daughter. He was sure of it now, and the weight of everything he'd missed. First words, first steps, first days of school, pressed down on him like a physical force. Let me make it right, he said quietly. You can't. Some things can't be fixed with money. I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about being present, about being there for her, and for you, from now on. Claire shook her head. She doesn't even know who you are, Marcus. How would I even begin to explain? Sorry, sweetie. Remember that nice man who reads stories? Surprise, he's your father who I've kept secret your whole life. We'll figure it out together. Please, Claire. I know I don't deserve it, but give me a chance to be what she needs. And what is that exactly? A father who appears once a week to read stories and then disappears into his billionaire life? She needs stability, consistency, things you've never been good at. The reading session began before Marcus could respond, but throughout the evening, he felt Claire's eyes on him. He read Charlotte's Web this time, and Bella cried when Charlotte died, burying her face in his shoulder. The gesture was so trusting, so natural, that Marcus had to pause to collect himself. Claire noticed, her expression softening for just a moment before her walls went back up. After the session, as Claire packed up Bella's things, Marcus made his move. I have a proposition. I'm not interested in your propositions. Just hear me out. I've established a scholarship fund for children of hospital staff. Full ride, college tuition, room and board, everything. Bella would qualify when the time comes. Claire's hand stilled on Bella's backpack. That's very generous. For all the staff. There's more. The hospital is expanding its employee assistance program. Rent support, debt relief, childcare subsidies. It launches next month. She turned to face him, suspicion clouding her features. Let me guess. This is all funded by you? By my foundation, yes. But it's not charity, Claire. It's investing in the people who keep this hospital running. People like you who sacrifice everything to help others. I don't want your pity. It's not pity. It's what I should have done years ago. Supporting the people who matter. He took a breath. And whether you let me into Bella's life or not, this fund exists. You can't stop me from helping the hospital staff. Claire's jaw clenched, and he could see her internal struggle. Pride warring with practicality, the desire to tell him to go to hell fighting against the reality of eviction notices and crushing debt. Mommy, can we get ice cream on the way home? Bella appeared between them, oblivious to the tension. Not tonight, honey. We need to go straight home. Please? Just a small cone? Claire's expression crumpled slightly, and Marcus saw what it cost her to deny her daughter even this small treat. Maybe next week, when we have a little extra. I'll get it, Marcus said quickly. There's a place around the corner. My treat. No! Please, Mommy? Bella's eyes were enormous and pleading. Claire looked between them, and Marcus saw the exact moment she gave in, not for herself, but for Bella. Fine. But just this once. The ice cream shop was warm and bright, a family-owned place that had been there for decades. Bella ordered strawberry with rainbow sprinkles and chattered happily about her day at school, while Claire sat silently, her untouched vanilla cone melting in its cup. Marcus watched his daughter, and he was certain now, completely certain, talk about her teacher and her best friend, and the hamster in their classroom. Every moment with her felt precious and stolen. Time he should have had all along. "I want to take a paternity test," he said suddenly, the words escaping before he could stop them. Claire went rigid. Bella, absorbed in her ice cream, didn't notice. "Excuse me? You know she's mine. I know she's mine. Let's make it official." "And then what, Marcus? You swoop in with lawyers and money and take her away from me?" "What? No. Claire, I would never—" "You're a billionaire. I'm a nurse with debt and an eviction notice. How do I know you won't decide I'm not a fit parent? Because I would never do that to you or to her." He leaned forward, his voice urgent. "I don't want to take her away. I want to be part of her life, part of both your lives, if you'll let me." Claire stared at him for a long moment, and when she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. She asked me about her father last month. She's the only kid in her class without a dad, and she wanted to know why. "What did you tell her?" "That he lived far away and didn't know about her. That it was complicated." A tear slid down her cheek. She asked if he would have wanted her if he'd known. I said yes. I had to believe that was true. Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. She didn't pull away. "It is true. God, Claire, if I'd known, I believe you," she whispered. "I didn't want to, but I do." Block 4. The paternity test confirmed what Marcus's heart had already known. Bella Mitchell was his daughter, sharing 99.9% of his DNA. He sat in his office staring at the results, tears streaming down his face. The first time he'd cried since his father's funeral 15 years ago. He'd created companies, built skyscrapers, moved markets with a single decision, but nothing compared to seeing it written in black and white. Father. Claire had agreed to tell Bella together, on a Saturday afternoon at a small park near their apartment. Marcus arrived early, pacing nervously by the swings, rehearsing words that seemed inadequate no matter how he arranged them. When they appeared, Bella ran ahead, her golden curls bouncing. She'd grown comfortable with him over the past month of reading sessions, even requesting that he be the one to read her favorite stories. She had no idea that today would change everything. "Mr. Whitmore!" She waved enthusiastically. "Mommy said you wanted to talk to me about something important." "I do." Marcus glanced at Claire, who nodded encouragingly despite the anxiety in her eyes. "Bella, do you know what I do for work? Mommy says you're very rich and you help people." "That's right, but there's something else I do, something even more important. Or at least, something I want to start doing." He knelt down to her eye level. "I want to be a dad." Bella's eyes widened. "You want to have a baby?" "No, sweetheart. I want to be a dad to a little girl who already exists. A very special little girl who loves strawberry ice cream and building block castles and the secret garden." He watched her process this, her young mind working through the implications. Claire sat down on a nearby bench, her hands clasped tightly together. "You mean, me?" Bella's voice was small, uncertain. "Yes, if you'd like that. You see, a long time ago before you were born, your mom and I knew each other. We cared about each other very much. But I had to go away for work, and I made a terrible mistake. I lost touch with your mom. I didn't know about you, Bella, but now that I do, I can't imagine anything I want more than to be your dad." Bella looked at Claire. "Is he really my daddy?" Claire's voice was thick with emotion. "Yes, baby, he really is. But why didn't you tell me before?" "Because I didn't know where he was, and I thought it would be easier if you didn't wonder about someone who might never come back. But I was wrong. I should have tried harder to find him." Bella was quiet for a long moment, her amber eyes, Marcus's eyes, moving between them. Then she asked the question that broke both adults' hearts. "Are you going to leave again?" Marcus felt his throat close. "Never. I promise you, Bella, I will never leave you. I've already missed 7 years of your life, and I can't get those back. But I can be here for everything that comes next. First days of school, birthdays, scraped knees, soccer games, whatever you want, I'll be there. Even dance recitals? I start ballet next month." She paused. "Well, Mommy said I might have to wait because it's expensive, especially dance recitals, and you're starting ballet next month, I promise." Bella threw her arms around his neck, and Marcus held his daughter for the first time, really held her, knowing who she was. He looked over her golden curls at Claire, who was crying silently, and mouthed, "Thank you." The next few months were an adjustment for everyone. Marcus moved into an apartment in Queens, a modest 2-bedroom that was laughably small compared to his penthouse, but only 3 blocks from Claire and Bella's building. He'd wanted them to move into his penthouse immediately, but Claire had firmly refused. "We're not charity cases, Marcus, and Bella needs stability, not to be uprooted into some fairy tale." So instead, Marcus uprooted himself. He started working from home most days, taking meetings via video call so he could pick Bella up from school. He attended parent-teacher conferences and learned to braid hair, badly, but Bella wore his crooked braids proudly anyway. He discovered the joy of helping with homework and the terror of 7-year-old girls' birthday parties. Claire watched his transformation with guarded hope. They were co-parenting successfully, but there was still a wall between them, built from years of hurt and misunderstanding. That wall began to crumble on a rainy Tuesday evening. Marcus had picked Bella up from ballet and brought her home to find Claire sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers, her head in her hands. "Mommy?" Bella's voice was worried. Claire looked up quickly, forcing a smile. "Hey, sweetie, how was ballet?" "Good. I learned a pirouette. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, baby. Just some grown-up stuff. Why don't you show Daddy your new move?" After Bella had demonstrated her pirouette, wobbling but determined, she went to her room to change. Marcus sat down across from Claire. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, just bills, Claire." She sighed. "My mother's medical bills. I thought I'd paid them all off, but apparently there was one account I missed that went to collections. They're threatening to garnish my wages." She laughed bitterly. "I finally felt like I was getting ahead, and now this." Marcus reached for the papers, but she pulled them away. "Don't. I'll figure it out." "Why won't you let me help? I'm Bella's father. We're family now. Because I've spent 7 years doing this alone, Marcus. I don't know how to be anything else." "Then learn. With me. Let me be your partner in this, not just Bella's father who swoops in for the fun parts." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so tired. Do you know how tired I am? Of working double shifts and budgeting down to the last dollar and lying awake worrying about money and Bella's future and what happens if I get sick or lose my job. I've been holding everything together with duct tape and prayer, and I'm just exhausted." Marcus moved around the table and pulled her into his arms. She resisted for a moment, then collapsed against him, sobbing. He held her, feeling her shake with years of pent-up fear and stress. "You don't have to do it alone anymore," he whispered into her hair. "I'm here. Let me be here." When she finally pulled back, her eyes were red, but clearer. "The medical bills, consider them paid. And before you argue, this isn't about pride, Claire. It's about Bella having a mother who isn't drowning in stress. She needs you healthy and happy. I don't know how to accept this. Start by saying thank you." A small smile tugged at her lips. "Thank you." "You're welcome. Now, there's something else I want to talk about." Her smile faded. "What?" "I've been thinking about our living situation. Marcus, I told you, hear me out. Not the penthouse. But there's a brownstone in Brooklyn near a great school district. 4 bedrooms, a backyard for Bella, room for all of us." He paused. "Separate bedrooms, no pressure. Just a home for our family." "Our family," Claire repeated softly, as if testing the words. "If you want it to be." She looked toward Bella's room, where their daughter was singing off-key. "She asked me last week if you were my boyfriend. I didn't know what to tell her." "What do you want to tell her?" Claire met his eyes. "I want to tell her that people make mistakes. That her father made a mistake 7 years ago. And I made a mistake by not trying harder to find him. But that sometimes, if you're very lucky, you get a second chance." Marcus's heart pounded. "Is that what this is? A second chance?" "I think it could be. If we're both willing to try." He cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing away her tears. "I fell in love with you 10 years ago, Claire Mitchell. I was too stupid and scared to hold on to it then. But I'm not that person anymore. You and Bella have changed me. You've shown me what actually matters. I'm scared, she whispered. Me too. But I'm more scared of losing you again. When he kissed her, it felt like coming home after a decade lost in the wilderness. Claire kissed him back, and years of pain and loneliness melted into possibility and hope. Are you guys kissing? They broke apart to find Bella standing in the doorway, her face scrunched up in exaggerated disgust that couldn't quite hide her smile. Maybe, Claire said, laughing. Is that okay with you? Bella pretended to think about it. I guess so. Does this mean Marcus is going to be my dad and your boyfriend? Would that be okay? Marcus asked. Bella ran to them, worming her way between them for a group hug. Yes, we can be a real family, like in the stories. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the backyard of their Brooklyn brownstone, watching Bella twirl in her flower girl dress, while Claire adjusted her simple white gown. They'd decided on a small ceremony, just close friends and family, nothing like the society wedding his publicist had suggested. Victoria was there with Caroline, who'd become fast friends with her cousin Bella. A few of Claire's nursing colleagues came, along with Patricia from the hospital volunteer program. Marcus's mother had flown in from Arizona, crying happy tears at finally meeting her granddaughter. As Claire walked down the makeshift aisle between rows of chairs, Marcus thought about the chain of events that had brought them here. A niece's asthma attack, a chance encounter in a hospital playroom, a little girl with amber eyes who'd led him back to the life he was meant to live. You know, he whispered to Claire as they stood together, hands clasped, I used to think success was measured in dollars and deals. And now? She whispered back. He looked at Bella, who was beaming at them, then at Claire's radiant face. Now I know it's measured in moments like this, in second chances and found families, and the courage to love even when you're terrified. That's very poetic for a billionaire businessman. I had a good teacher once, a literature student who made me think about what really matters. As they exchanged vows in their backyard, with their daughter watching and their future stretching bright before them, Marcus realized that he'd finally built something more valuable than any empire, a home, a family, a love that had survived years of separation and pain to bloom again, stronger than before. And when Bella threw her arms around both of them after the ceremony, shouting, "We're a real family now," Marcus knew that he'd finally, truly succeeded at the only thing that had ever really mattered.